Good afternoon and welcome back to My Harlem Portraits, the show that aims at shedding the light on the fundamental contribution of African Americans to the building of this country and on Black excellence. To represent Black excellence, we have today a Broadway star, a regular of Broadway, Miss Christina Sajous, who plays the acid queen in the Who's Tommy, which opened on March 28th at the Nederlander Theater. Thank you for being with us and welcome to My Harlem.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I'm a fan of MNN, so this is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. I'm very happy about that.
Yes.
So I saw the show and I loved your role. I love the way you play it. It's a difficult role, so we are going to talk about that.
Yes, most definitely.
So it's been 55 years since the Who, which were a really iconic rock band, released first Tommy as a 2 LP concert album. And then also 50 years since the show hit the big screen and became a movie, a very famous and successful movie. And it's been 30 years since it became a Tony, Grammy, and Drama Desk Awards winning musical on Broadway. You are playing in the revival. The original creators, Pete Townshend, who wrote the lyrics, the book, composed the music, and Des McAnuff, who directed it and wrote the book also, have reunited to bring this story of Tommy Walker to the audiences of today.
Yes.
And this new Tommy, and you were in that run also, came after a sold-out run in Chicago, where you also played, right?
Yes, the Acid Queen. Yes, that's correct.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's talk about you.
Okay.
Now. You graduated from New York Tisch School of the Arts and the International Theater Wing of Amsterdam. Your acting career is both on Broadway and TV, and recently you have been Associate Director for the world premiere of A Wonderful World about jazz legend Louis Armstrong.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the moments in your career that you consider the most memorable, those who made like it was a passage to a new step, and those most difficult ones maybe.
Well, I will say first and foremost, I am a New Yorker through and through. I was born and raised here in Manhattan. I lived in the Bronx growing up. I went to school on the Upper West Side. I went to LaGuardia High School. I also went to nursery in Harlem, you know, the school storefront. I also went to Harlem School of the Arts. I took classes and also performed in Classical Theater of Harlem. And so I say it all to say is that my whole life has been encapsulated in this theatrical world. And New York has been a tremendous, has given me tremendous access to that. And so I think the aha moment for me was knowing how accessible the arts were just living in the city. I was able to see off-Broadway shows when I was in elementary school. And, you know, my mom and I, my grandmother and I can go to a Broadway show when I was younger. And so I just think that being in New York has been the aha moment for me, because here I am many years later, still living in New York, blocks away from the theater. I can actually walk to work, which is a blessing. And being able to say, wow, like I'm an artist and I live and breathe this thing that I have not only chose, but it's also chosen me. And so the aha moment, or the moment where things started to make sense, is probably when it started when I was very, very young, just because life and art was my entire life.
Wonderful. That is true. That's the reason why I'm in New York.
Yes.
Why I'm in Harlem in New York, because I think it's the part of New York, apart from Broadway, where there is a richest culture.
Yes, it is. I mean, I lived in Harlem for 10 years, and talk about the richness of culture. You know, I used to visit your studio that was inside of the, what is it, City College.
Yeah.
And just knowing that there's all this access to art. You know, you have the National Black Theater of Harlem. I mean, there's just so much to do, even in that bubble alone, that is so rich in culture and history that you have no choice but to be inspired every day when you walk through the streets.
Yes. And of the shows that you've done, the one that you remember or you love most, like I love Tupac Shakur, and I
Yes.
did Tupac Shakur's Holler If Ya Hear Me.
Yes.
I'm saying.
Yes.
A little bit about that, maybe.
Yes. Well, it was directed by Kenny Leon, which was an honor and privilege to be able to work with such a profound director, but also to be able to speak these lyrics that are so prophetic and has intention to change not only ourselves, but change the world, felt like an honor every single night. However, the business, I almost feel like it was a show that kind of came before its time. The theater world, or the world outside of it, wasn't able to really catch on to the magic that we were bringing to the Palace Theater at that time. And so unfortunately that show was actually very short-lived, where I think now if it had opened around this time, I think it would have had so much more of an opportunity to really speak a truth that a lot of us are more familiar with, because we've witnessed police brutality. We've witnessed how there is violence everywhere. We also witness how people want these things to change, and you're seeing people march down the streets, literally fighting for change. I think at that time, it was probably too soon for the world to recognize what we were trying to say on that stage.
What year was it?
Around 2014, I believe.
2014.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I missed it, because I'm a fan of Tupac. I love, yeah. And this year would have been good to revive it.
I think so
50 years
too.
of pop, that would have been perfect.
What I heard, I could be wrong, but I do believe that what Kenny Leon ended up doing with that piece was taking it to prisons in order to educate the men and women in prisons.
Yeah.
And so that's what I believe actually happened to that piece. I'm so happy it didn't actually kind of just dwindle away and just become a part of American history over there. I'm happy that it became an educational project for our people.
Now that you mention it, I read about it.
Yes. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was correct, but that's what I remember hearing about.
I think I read about it. All right. So let's go to Tommy. How did you come to Tommy? And what did you know about it before? You are too young to have seen the other one.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it either, so
Well, I was probably about 23 years old when I was first introduced to the album. My friend Chad Karstarfin is actually in Hell's Kitchen right now. He's my best friend. But at that time, many, many years ago, he gave me the album because he knew that I was doing kind of like a regional production of it in Arkansas. So I didn't really know much about the production or even the story or even the music at the time. I knew about The Who, but I didn't know about that album in particular. And so I went down the rabbit hole of research. I then discovered that Tina Turner was in the movie, who I've always been a fan of. And so for me, that was a selling point. I was like, wow, like I aspire to have at least an ounce of what she does. And so when I got cast and I studied that album, I then soon discovered how deep this material was. But I think at the time I was too young to really understand who the Acid Queen was. I might have been still playing it on a surface level. And then many years later, here I am now performing in this production. And I auditioned last year, got cast for the production that was in the Goodman, directed by Des McAnuff. And here I am playing the Acid Queen again, many, like over a decade later, with a new understanding of not only who I am, but what this material is saying in this time. And I would say that the beauty and excitement has been able to discover who this woman is, not on a surface level, but on a human level. Herself is very similar to Tommy, because she is riddled by being a sex worker and drugs. She herself is also deaf, and we use the term dumb and blind. in many ways, because she
Oh.
uses drugs to kind of shield her reality in a way.
I didn't understand that. See? That's very interesting.
Yes.
So you are a little
Like to get it.
that's very interesting. And you did it wonderfully. It was a beautiful piece. So my next question was to talk about your character, the Acid Queen, and to tell us a bit about the storyline of Tommy. What
Yes.
happens in Tommy?
Yes. So there is a couple who fall in love, Captain Walker and Mrs. Walker. They fall in love, they get married. He ends up going to war, held in captivity, but unbeknownst to her, she's been told he's actually been murdered. And so at the time she finds out that he's murdered, she's actually pregnant. So because he's gone, she obviously, pursues her life, and she has a lover, and it's been 4 years. He finally gets released from captivity. He comes back home and sees that she's been with a lover. She is with a lover actually in that moment. It's her 21st birthday. And there's aggression that happens, and then a murder occurs in that moment. Tommy, as a child, witnesses that murder. And because his parents have sworn him to secrecy, they say, don't tell anyone, you didn't see anything, you didn't hear anything. So they basically traumatize him with going, and I say the term deaf, dumb, and blind, because I know that dumb is an older term, but in our production, it's the term that we use to describe his trauma.
Yeah.
And so he literally, riddled by trauma, goes deaf, dumb, and blind. And the family obviously feels responsible. So they find every way to kind of save him from himself, to bring him back to normal. He's gone to doctors. Doctors don't have an answer to why he's like this. He's been taken advantage of by family members. They take him to church. They even try taking him to the Acid Queen, who swears that she's a gypsy who's a conjurer, but really she's just a con artist looking for her hit. So they go through all these stages for him to finally have his breakthrough by looking in the mirror and facing the self that he is. He also becomes a pinball wizard, and that's where he actually finds his talent. And there's this beautiful story about Pete Townshend, that this is a loosely based story, and in some ways, like the pinball wizard, where he finds his talent, is kind of similar to finding the guitar in a way. And so there is a lot of humanity that has been built inside of this show to really see how a lot of us can kind of rise out of our trauma.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. It was pretty heavy to see,
yeah.
Because it goes through this trauma and you go through this trauma with it.
Yes.
I really love though the set, the way the set is done with the play on lights that make you feel like you are inside of it.
Yes.
A 3D perspective that is beautiful. I really love that.
Thank you.
How difficult was to play the Acid Queen?
It's still very difficult for various reasons. One, the women before me hold such a blueprint of this production. You have Tina Turner, and you also have Cheryl Freeman, who is the original Acid Queen on Broadway 31 years ago. And these are powerhouse performers, right? So you have that layer, but on top of that is the actual role itself. And it takes full facility of your vocal journey. You're using your very lows to your very highs, because the way that I see the role is that she's explosive, and she actually grows in her explosion. Why? Because her desire and need to get her next heroin hit becomes more aggressive, but then what is acid? What is Acid Queen? So I think about how the voice might change. Maybe there's something acidity acidic about her personality, her need, her desire, her sound. So there's all of that. So it's vocal, facility, your full facility, but then I'm also doing back bends, and I'm, rolling my back on the floor, and I'm doing high kicks. And so the role demands a lot in such a truncated, moment, because I'm the only one singing it. There's no background music, no background singers. And so it's all driven by intention and action. And the moment that the gun goes off, you have to keep going until it ends. So it's hard because it takes my full self to be able to generate that particular character.
And you do it wonderfully.
Thank you so much.
Wonderfully. I see all that you're saying in that concentrated moment of nouns. How relevant and current you think the story of Tommy Walker is today compared to 30 years ago?
I think what makes it actually probably even more relevant today is kind of looking at our lives after this post-pandemic world, and how we, during the pandemic, had to be in isolation. And if you were one of those people that took the opportunity to look in the mirror and really see yourself, and if you had an opportunity to change who you wanted to be in this next stage of life, after we felt that we can come out of this pandemic, then you asked yourself the question, who am I? What am I? Who am I going to be after this? What parts of me do I need to fix and change and heal? What family members do I need to call and forgive, or I have to ask for forgiveness from? How do I take care of myself when there's no gyms and, we can't go to, I guess we had grocery stores essential, but even that was very limited, like what new talents can I learn in cooking? I think that we're in a world where it is the I and me generation, and we're kind of forced to ask the questions and literally face ourselves in the mirror about, like, what am I going to do with the person that I'm staring right back at? And how do I heal myself in a world that is actually ailing?
Fantastic. You have really, I love it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
It was, this pandemic has changed the world and has changed the people in the world. And unfortunately, in many, many cases, not for the best. Like we see all these wars going on. And so it's...
we're a mess. We're actually a mess. And, that's why I said it, like, those who took the opportunity, because it's also brave to take the opportunity to change and fix yourself, even when you're dealing with grief, and, the life that you thought you once had no longer exists. You've lost family members, you've lost your job, you don't have any money, you're dependent on the government. There was just so much change that happened that we kind of had to learn how to humble ourselves. I always say, like, not only was I in isolation, but so was Beyonce. It was the moment that we were all on the same level, kind of like the eclipse yesterday, where you just saw everyone on the same level looking at this one majestic thing.
Yeah. That's exactly what I thought yesterday. I was on my terrace. I didn't have the glasses, so I did what they taught us in elementary school when we had another eclipse. Get the water, and it reflects in the water, and you look into the water.
Is that what you did?
That's what I did.
Did it work?
Yes, I could see it. Except when it was maybe something fell in the water and the water was moving, but otherwise I could see it in the water. So
unbelievable.
Pretty good, yeah.
Unbelievable.
I remember that.
That's amazing. Yeah. I'm gonna actually steal that when there is a next time.
Yes. The Tommy goes also through all this different. It's a tale of resilience. It's the tale of abuse. It's a tale of sadness and murder and so on. And it goes through all this, and it's, as we were saying, extremely relevant in today's world, which have gone through this pandemic. So what do you think these issues of trauma, abuse, leadership, and spirituality? Because let's talk about that aspect, because he becomes like the leader of a cult without wanting. Someone else now wants to be leader of a cult.
Yes, yes. It's interesting too, because Ali, who is our Tommy, who I think is extraordinary, and he's making his Broadway debut. He said something one time for an interview, and it kind of stuck. This is not verbatim, but this is kind of the gist of what he said. It's basically the dangers of putting all your energy and trust into a human being who is a social sensation, I'm that's not really what he said, but it's kind of like the gist of what he was saying. And I think about social media and the influence of that, how we put so much of our own trust into these people that we don't actually know, but we admire or aspire to be, and how dangerous that is, because once they turn the camera off, there's someone different. There's someone, that's why when all these celebrities, go through divorce, we're like devastated. We're like, oh my gosh, I aspire to be you. I aspire to be that relationship. And then when that relationship doesn't survive, and they're going through divorce, we're all like flabbergasted and confused. We're like, how did that happen? It's like, well, because they're human beings and they have real human being issues. But I say that all to say is that, similar to Tommy, is that you have someone who turned his trauma into a superpower, so he becomes a pinball wizard because it's an outlet for him to escape. He just happens to be really talented in it. Why? Because he uses all of his instincts to play the pinball machine. But then when he realizes that everyone now wants to follow in his footsteps of being deaf, dumb, and blind, that's actually not the way to live. And so he's trying to pull himself out of it and saying, like, listen, I suffered from my trauma. You don't need to be like me. Like, being like me means that you then also suffer. And I don't want to live in a world where people are suffering.
Yeah.
And which is why in the end of the show, it's kind of sad, because he's followed by this tremendous cult who then turn on him because they're actually choosing to live in blindness. Yeah. They don't want to live and breathe and see and heal. They much rather live inside of the bubble of their own trauma because it's safe.
Yeah, like the fan girl who wants the autograph and is trying to talk to her, and she doesn't care about talking.
She doesn't care.
The autograph. That's what she wants.
Exactly. We want to, that's why we all have cameras, because we got to capture everything on screen and film. Because if it didn't happen on our cameras, then that moment didn't happen at all. And I think what's sad is that what I tried to do yesterday, even with the eclipse, was I just put my camera down, and I just wanted to experience what it felt like to be in the present moment, to witness something so beautiful and scientific and miraculous and godly, rather than having to remind the entire social media, I captured this majestic thing. And no offense to the people who did. Thank God there were people who did, because I did screenshot some things and I was like, that's wonderful. I'll never forget that it happened. But for me personally, I wanted to experience the moment.
Yeah, that's very wise. Very, very wise.
Yes.
So what you think then is the message that the show wants to bring? And tell me how you felt with this cast, because you mentioned Ali Louis Bourgeois,
Mm-hmm.
who is fantastic.
Yes.
Beauty on the whole cast was. How was it being in this kind of family?
Yes, I absolutely love them. I actually can't wait to see them this evening, because we have a show this evening. I get so excited about sharing the stage, the space with this particular company. They're incredibly, an incredibly humble cast. However, one of the most talented. So there's a little bit of like that confidence, but it's a quiet confidence. They're incredibly kind. They're curious. They're thirsty, but they're also very I don't know, like I go back to the word confidence because they know what they do is great. You know, there's no arrogance there. There's no ego. Everyone is happy to be there and everyone's happy to see each other. There's no bad egg. There's no faces of disappointment. Everyone comes ready to work and to play and to tell the story. We're also having 16 debuts happening. We've had people who were in the Goodman Chicago who then transferred to Broadway. It's a blessing to be able to work during this time, but also work with a group of people who are literally happy to be there. Because it's very hard to find, you know, especially in theater, because of the redundancy of what we do 8 times a week, there tends to be a jadedness and your body starts to operate like a machine. But what I love is that, you know, there's a newness to this show every day because everyone comes in with a new attitude.
Wonderful. And they're all a pretty young cast, so that adds, right, to the show.
They are, and I actually make fun, but I'm like the eldest woman of the cast, which blows my mind because once upon a time I was not that person. And I was like, oh wow, like I'm the eldest woman. I'm like the auntie of the group.
Which is quite a lot saying because you are so young. So it is really, really young cast. So why should people come and see the show? And we have left.
I say come to see the show. One, okay, for various reasons. If you've never seen this show, I guarantee, or even heard of Tommy, or even heard of The Who, I guarantee when you come to the theater, you're going to have an exponential experience that will not be just theatrical, but also an experience of knowing self. I always think it's important to come to the theater and find yourself inside the material as an audience member. So when you walk away, you're somewhat transformed and changed and inspired or something, you know, to be affected in a way. So come to the theater to be able to discover who you are while watching other characters on stage discover who they are. But then also, if you are a fan of the show and you know Tommy and you know The Who and you've known this show or you've seen it before, please come and support us and take the opportunity to allow yourself to have a sense of nostalgia. I always say it at the end of the show always feels like church. It's a very big spiritual experience. I'm not sure which night you came, but oftentimes in the finale, you see people stand to their feet with their hands like raised to the sky because they are then reminded of the music and how that music changed their lives. And to be able to witness it, like you said, 55 years later or 31 years later, they're transformed by that, and their bodies, their senses are remembering that moment.
And then you see during the show, you have all the classical, the iconic songs of the Who. So
yes, absolutely.
This is going to be for them wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. We are at the end of our conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for having given us your time.
Of course.
Until when is the show running?
And oh wow, we are open-ended actually, you know, and it seems like we're doing well. We've had a lot of great pre-sales, and so as of right now, and you know, especially with the state of theater, we look like we are running well. We're a well-oiled machine, and because we're open-ended, sky's the limit.
On forever. Wonderful. So I wish you that. I wish you that. And I thank you again for being with us. And I thank you, our viewers, for following My Harlem Portraits. If you want to see older episodes, go to YouTube, My Harlem Portraits, Maria G. Cavenaghi, and you'll be able to see all the past episodes of our show. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for everything. You have a beautiful day. It's beautiful outside.
Yeah, it is fantastic.
All right, take care.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.